By the end of that day, my marriage was over. And so was his reputation. I sat there, gripping my hands together under the wooden table, watching my husband, Dominic, laugh with his mistress. He looked so confident, so assured of his victory. He adjusted his expensive tie, a tie I had bought him, though he didn't know it, and whispered something to the woman beside him. Ashley. She was wearing a white dress of all things. It was fitted lace and completely inappropriate for a courtroom. She looked like she was ready to walk down the aisle, not watch a marriage dissolve. She giggled, throwing her head back, making sure I saw her joy. They thought I was broken. They thought I was destitute. They had absolutely no idea that the woman sitting across from them, the quiet housewife with the messy black hair and the plain gray dress, was about to unleash a storm that would wipe them off the map. I leaned back slightly, watching the clock on the wall tick. I wasn't waiting for the judge. I was waiting for my brother. And when Anthony walked through those doors, everything Dominic thought he knew about his life was going to turn to ash. Before we dive into the destruction of the man who betrayed me, please take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You are not going to want to miss a single detail of this revenge. If you've ever been underestimated like this video right now, trust me, the payoff is worth it. Let's get into it. My name is Mirabel. To the world, or at least to the small world my husband lived in, I was just a stay-at-home mom. I was the woman who made peanut butter sandwiches, folded laundry, and waited patiently for her husband to come home from work. But 3 years ago, I made a choice that defined my entire existence. I decided to vanish. My father was a titan of industry. When he died, he didn't just leave me money. He left me a legacy. The Hunter Tech Empire. We're talking about an $8 billion inheritance. Yes, billion. At 29, I was quietly one of the wealthiest women on the continent. But I was also one of the loneliest. I had watched my father's life closely. I saw the vultures circling him at parties, the women who loved his wallet but hated his jokes, the friends who disappeared the second stock prices dipped. It was a cold, shiny, hollow life. I didn't want it. So I made a pact with myself. I would find love, real love, without the price tag attached. I handed the keys to the kingdom over to my older brother, Anthony. He was the shark of the family, brilliant, aggressive, and protective. Along with our family advisor, Mr. Harry, they ran Hunter Industries while I rented a generic one-bedroom apartment downtown and got a job at a bookstore. I traded designer silk for cotton blends and five-star dining for takeout noodles. And it worked. I met Dominic 3 months later. It was pouring rain. I had ducked into a coffee shop, soaking wet, my black hair plastered to my face. Dominic was there, sitting at a corner table with blueprints spread out everywhere. He looked frantic. He was an architect trying to fix a design flaw before a deadline. He knocked his eraser off the table and it rolled to my feet. When I picked it up and handed it to him, he looked at me. Really looked at me and smiled. It wasn't a smile that said, "I know who you are." It was a smile that said, "Hi, you have pretty eyes." We talked for hours that day. He told me about his struggles, how he was working for a mid-level firm but dreamed of designing skyscrapers that touched the clouds. He had passion. He had grit. He didn't care about the car I drove or the brand of my purse. He fell in love with Mirabel, the girl who liked old books and rainy days. We got married a year later at the courthouse. It was small, intimate, perfect. When I said I do, I meant it with every fiber of my being. I thought I had won the lottery of life. Not the money, but the man. 2 years into our marriage, we had our beautiful daughter, Sasha. Those early days were the happiest of my life. I played the role of the supportive wife perfectly. I cooked dinner every night. I rubbed his shoulders when he was stressed. I managed our budget, clipping coupons and hunting for sales, pretending that we had to be careful with money. But behind the scenes, I was pulling strings. Dominic didn't know that the apartment building we lived in, I owned it. The landlord he thought was generous for never raising our rent? That was me. And his career. That was the biggest secret of all. Dominic was talented, but the architecture world is brutal. He was struggling to get noticed. So I stepped in. I used shell companies and anonymous investment firms to funnel projects to his firm, specifically requesting Dominic as the lead architect. I was his mysterious benefactor. I was the reason he landed the Skyline project. I was the reason he got his promotion. I built the pedestal he stood on because I wanted him to feel like a king. I wanted him to have the confidence to match his dreams. I loved him that much. But success does strange things to people who aren't ready for it. About 6 months ago, the atmosphere in our home shifted. Dominic started coming home later and later. He stopped asking about my day. He stopped playing with Sasha on the weekends. He bought new suits, arrogant, flashy suits, and started complaining that I didn't understand his world. "You're just home all day, Mirabel," he'd say, rolling his eyes when I asked about his meetings. "You don't get the pressure I'm under. I'm building an empire here." The irony almost made me laugh. "You're building an empire? Honey, I own the city you're building it in." But I bit my tongue. I wanted to be supportive. Then he hired Ashley. I met her at his firm's Christmas party. She was 25, with blonde extensions and a dress that looked like it cost more than she made in a month. She was his new executive assistant. The moment I shook her hand, I felt cold. It wasn't just jealousy, it was instinct. She looked at Dominic with a hunger that had nothing to do with work. And she looked at me like I was a stain on the carpet she needed to scrub out. "Oh, you're the wife," she said, looking me up and down. "Dom talks about you. He says you're very domestic." "Dom?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. Dominic quickly stepped in, putting a hand on the small of her back. "A little too low, a little too familiar. Ashley is invaluable, Mirabel. She really organizes my life." "I bet she does," I said. The slide into betrayal was fast after that. There were hushed phone calls in the bathroom. The scent of vanilla perfume on his jackets. A scent I never wore. Receipts for lunches at French bistros when he said he was eating at his desk. I wasn't stupid. I knew. But I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to fight for my family. One Tuesday night, everything crashed. Dominic had passed out on the sofa after a long client dinner. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. Then it buzzed again. And again. Picked it up. He had changed his passcode recently, but I had seen him type it in earlier that week. It was 1-2-3-4. Simple. Careless. Just like him. I unlocked it, and my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. The text thread with Ashley was endless. "Ashley, I miss you already. That boring wife of yours doesn't deserve you." Dominic, "I know, baby. Just a little longer. Once the bonus from the Skyline project hits, I'm moving out. I can't stand looking at her anymore. She's so plain. Ashley, she's pathetic. She has no idea she's losing everything. I can't wait to be Mrs. Dominic. We're going to look so good together." Dominic, "She's dead weight, Ash. I built this success myself and she's just dragging me down. I'll leave her the old car. That's more than she deserves." There were photos. Explicit ones. Plans for a vacation to the Maldives. Paid for with money from our joint account. Money that I had secretly deposited to keep us afloat whenever his bonus was late. I sat there in the dark, the blue light of the phone illuminating my face. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone. A strange calm washed over me. It was the ice in my veins, the hunter blood finally waking up. He called me plain? Dead weight. He thought he built his success himself? Okay. If he wanted to see what life was like without me, I would show him. But I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to dismantle him. I took screenshots of everything. I forwarded them to a secure server. Then I placed the phone back exactly where it was. The next morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table when he woke up. Sasha was at daycare. It was just us. "We need to talk," I said. My voice was steady. Dominic rubbed his eyes, annoyed. "Can it wait? I have a big meeting." "No, it can't." I slid a printed photo across the table. It was a screenshot of his text calling me dead weight. His face went pale, then flushed a deep, angry red. "You went through my phone? You're sleeping with your assistant," I countered. "And you're spending our savings on her." I expected an apology. I expected him to beg. But the Dominic I loved was gone. The man standing in front of me sneered. "Yeah? So what?" he spat. "I'm a successful man, Mirabel. I have needs. Ashley understands my ambition. She fits my image. Look at you. You're cute. He gestured vaguely at my sweatshirt. You haven't accomplished anything in your life. You're lucky I stayed this long. I want a divorce, I said quietly. He laughed. A cruel barking sound. You want a divorce? Fine. Get out. This is my apartment. I pay the rent. I pay for everything. You have nothing, Mirabel. You are nothing without me. I'm giving you one chance, Dominic, I said, standing up. We can do this civilly. For Sasha's sake. Admit what you did, give me fair custody, and we walk away. I'm keeping the kid, he said, turning his back to pour coffee. Ashley will make a great stepmom. She actually has style. You can visit on weekends. Maybe. That was the moment. That was the moment I decided to burn it all down. Okay, Dominic, I whispered. Have it your way. I packed a bag that morning. I took Sasha and moved into a cheap motel for a few days, or at least that's what I told him. In reality, I called Anthony. It's time, I told my brother. Are you sure? Anthony asked. His voice was low, dangerous. He had never liked Dominic. He wants to take Sasha. He's with the girl. Activate the protocol. Done, Anthony said. I'll call Harry. We'll see you in court. The next 3 months were a nightmare of legal bullying. Dominic hired a lawyer named Patrick, a slimy, aggressive man who specialized in crushing dependent wives. They blocked my access to the joint accounts. They sent threatening letters claiming I was an unfit mother because I was currently unemployed. Dominic moved Ashley into our apartment, my apartment, 2 days after I left. I had to endure dropping Sasha off for visits and seeing Ashley standing in the doorway, wearing my robe, holding my coffee mug, smirking at me. Bye, Mirabel, she'd chirp. Don't worry, I'll braid Sasha's hair. I know you're not very good at it. I swallowed the rage. I held it down like bile. Wait, I told myself. Just wait. Finally, the court date arrived. I wore the simplest dress I owned. No makeup. Hair tied back. I wanted to look exactly like the helpless victim they painted me to be. I took a cab to the courthouse. Dominic arrived in a brand new Porsche. I knew for a fact he couldn't afford the lease on that car unless he dipped into the project funds that ultimately came from me. Patrick, his lawyer, walked beside him, carrying a briefcase that looked like it was made of alligator skin. And Ashley, she was practically skipping. We entered the courtroom. My side of the table was empty, just me and a notepad. Dominic's side was crowded. He sat in the middle, Patrick on his right, Ashley on his left. The judge, a stern man with gray eyebrows, called the session to order. Patrick stood up immediately, buttoning his jacket. He didn't even look at me. He addressed the judge with a bored arrogance. Your Honor, this is a simple case. My client, Mr. Dominic, is a prominent architect. He is the sole provider. The respondent, Mrs. Mirabel, has no income, no assets, and quite frankly, no ambition. She has been leeching off my client's success for 3 years. Dominic nodded solemnly, putting on a sad face. I tried to help her, Your Honor. But she just refuses to work. We are requesting full custody of the child, Patrick continued. Mrs. Mirabel cannot provide a stable environment. She is currently living in a transient situation. We are generous enough to offer her $1,000 a month in alimony for 1 year, just to help her get on her feet. But that is it. We want the apartment, the car, and the child. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Mirabel, you have no legal representation? My lawyer is running a little late, Your Honor, I said softly. Ashley giggled. She whispered loudly to Dominic. She probably couldn't afford the bus fare. Dominic smirked. Just sign the papers, Mirabel. Stop embarrassing yourself. It's over. Yes, I said, looking him dead in the eye. It is over. At that exact moment, the double doors at the back of the courtroom slammed open. The sound was like a gunshot. The entire room turned. First came the security. 6 men in black tactical suits, earpieces in place, moving in a V formation. They didn't look like mall cops, they looked like special forces. They cleared the aisle, pushing the swinging gate open. Then came Mr. Harry. He was in his 70s, wearing a 3-piece bespoke suit that screamed old money. He carried 2 thick leather files. And finally Anthony. My brother looked like he had just stepped off the cover of Forbes magazine. He was wearing a charcoal suit cut sharp enough to bleed. His Rolex glinting under the courtroom lights. He didn't walk, he prowled. The air in the room changed instantly. The oxygen seemed to be sucked out. Dominic's jaw dropped. He recognized the suit. He recognized the power. But he didn't understand. "Who are you?" the judge asked, banging his gavel. "You can't just barge in here." Anthony stopped right next to my table. He placed a hand on my shoulder, squeezed it gently, and then turned to the judge. "Apologies, Your Honor," Anthony said. His voice smooth as silk but heavy as iron. "I am Anthony Hunter, CEO of Hunter Industries. And I am here to represent my sister, Mirabel Hunter." "Hunter," Dominic whispered. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a ghost. "What?" Mr. Harry stepped forward, placing the leather files on the judge's bench. "We are also filing a countersuit, Your Honor, for fraud, embezzlement, and emotional distress. And we have brought receipts." Patrick, the slimy lawyer, stood up, stuttering. "Objection. This is ambush. Who is this woman?" I stood up then. I didn't look down. I didn't slouch. I looked straight at Dominic, whose eyes were wide with terror. "I'm not just your wife, Dominic," I said, my voice ringing clear in the silent room. "I'm your boss." "Your boss?" Dominic stammered, his voice cracking. He looked from me to Anthony, then back to me, his brain trying to misfire. "That's impossible. You work at a bookstore. You clip coupons." Mr. Harry cleared his throat, opening the first file. "Actually, Mr. Dominic, Mrs. Hunter, excuse me, Mrs. Mirabel, owns the bookstore building. In fact, she owns the building you currently reside in. And perhaps most relevant to this proceeding, she is the primary shareholder of the shell corporation Vertex Capital." Dominic froze. "Vertex?" "No. Vertex is my biggest client. They fund 90% of my projects." "Correction," I said, stepping closer to the aisle. "I fund 90% of your projects. Every skyscraper you claimed you designed? I approved the budget. Every bonus you used to buy Ashley those bracelets? That was my money. I built you, Dominic. Brick by brick. I wanted you to feel like a man, so I let you believe you were doing it on your own." "This is a lie," Ashley screeched, standing up. "She's lying. Look at her dress. She's poor." Anthony laughed. It was a dark, terrifying sound. "This dress." He pointed to me. "She wears it because she doesn't need to prove anything to people like you. My sister is worth $8 billion. She could buy this entire courthouse and turn it into a parking lot before lunch." The judge was flipping through the financial documents Harry had presented. His eyes were getting wider by the second. "These documents appear to be authentic," the judge muttered. "Verified by the SEC. Property deeds. Good Lord." Patrick, realizing his ship was sinking, tried to pivot. "Your Honor, regardless of her hidden wealth, this deception proves she is untrustworthy. She lied to my client for years." "I didn't lie," I shot back. "I omitted. I wanted to see if he loved me for me. And now I know. He loved my support, he loved my patience, but the moment he thought he found something shinier, he threw me away like trash." Mr. Harry pulled out the second file. "Regarding the countersuit, Your Honor, since Mr. Dominic's lifestyle was funded by marital assets which were unknowingly provided by Mrs. Mirabel, the money he spent on his mistress constitutes theft of marital property." Harry began to read from a list. The room was deadly silent. Item 1. Diamond bracelet, Cartier, $12,000. Purchase February 14th. Item 2. Lease on a Mercedes-Benz, down payment $8,000. Item 3. Luxury suite at the St. Regis, $4,500. Item 4. Plastic surgery consultation for Miss Ashley, $6,000. Ashley covered her mouth, gasping. Every eye in the room turned to her. She looked shrinking, small and cheap in her white dress now. Total misappropriated funds, Harry concluded, amount to $145,000 in the last 6 months alone. We are demanding immediate repayment. I don't have that kind of money. Dominic shouted, standing up. You know I don't. The accounts are frozen. And there's more, Anthony added calmly. As of this morning, Vertex Capital has terminated all contracts with your architectural firm. Effective immediately. Dominic swayed. He grabbed the table to steady himself. You can't do that. That's my career. That's my reputation. You ruined your own reputation, I said. You wanted to be a big man, Dominic? You wanted to trade me in? Fine. But you don't get to keep the life I bought for you. The judge looked over his glasses. Mr. Dominic, is it true that you use joint funds for these expenses? I thought it was my money. Dominic pleaded. I earned it. Money paid to you by her company, the judge corrected. Technically, yes, you earned it, but spending marital assets on an affair is looked upon very poorly by this court. And given the financial disparity, I am inclined to grant full custody to the mother. No, Dominic yelled. She can't take Sasha. I can and I will, I said. Because I can provide her with a life of integrity. You wanted to introduce her to your mistress? To the woman who called her mother dead weight? Not in this lifetime. The judge banged his gavel. Order. Based on the evidence presented, I am dismissing the plaintiff's request for alimony. Custody of the minor child, Sasha, is awarded to the mother, Mirabel Hunter. Mr. Dominic, you are ordered to repay the misappropriated sum of $145,000 within 60 days. Failure to do so will result in asset seizure. And, given the nature of the fraud, I am granting a restraining order. Miss Ashley is to stay 500 yards away from the child. But, Ashley started. Sit down, the judge roared. It was done. In 20 minutes, the power dynamic had completely flipped. I turned to leave. My security team formed a circle around me. Anthony put his arm around my shoulders. We walked toward the door, leaving them in the wreckage. Mirabel. Wait. I stopped. I shouldn't have, but I did. I turned around slowly. Dominic had run out from behind his table. He was standing in the middle of the aisle looking desperate. He was sweating, his tie crooked. Mirabel, please, he breathed. I didn't know. If I had known. Baby, we can fix this. We're a family. You have billions. We can do so much good. Think of Sasha. She needs her father. I love you. I've always loved you. Ashley meant nothing to me. From the back, I heard Ashley let out a sob. You liar, she screamed at him. I looked at Dominic. Really looked at him. I saw the greed in his eyes. It wasn't love. It was panic. He saw the money walking out the door, and he was terrified of being poor again. You're right, Dominic, I said softly. If you had known, you would have treated me like a queen. You would have stayed. You would have been the perfect husband. He nodded eagerly, stepping forward. Yes. Yes, exactly. And that, I said, my voice turning to ice, is exactly why you disgust me. You only respect power. You only love money. You never loved me. You loved what I could give you. I leaned in closer, just enough so only he could hear. You said I was nothing. Remember? Now you're going to find out what it feels like to be nothing. Goodbye, Dominic. I turned my back on him. Let's go, Anthony. As the heavy wooden door swung shut behind us, I heard Dominic screaming my name, his voice cracking with desperation. It was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. 6 months later. Life looks a little different now. I don't live in that small apartment anymore. Sasha and I live in the Hunter estate, surrounded by gardens where she can run and play. She has a pony now, something she always asked Dominic for, and he always said was stupid. I took my rightful place at Hunter Industries. I didn't hide in the shadows anymore. I walked into the boardroom, head held high, and took the CEO chair. Anthony went back to running operations, happy to have his sister back. As for Dominic, the downfall was brutal. Without the Vertex Capital contracts, his firm went under in 3 weeks. No other respectable developer would hire him once word got out about how he treated his wife. My brother made sure the story was whispered in all the right ears. He lost the apartment. The Porsche was repossessed. Last I heard, he was working as a junior draftsman at a budget firm 2 towns over. living in a studio apartment that's smaller than my closet. He sends emails sometimes begging to see Sasha, begging for a second chance. My lawyers handle them. He gets his supervised visits once a month in a secure facility. Sasha barely asks for him anymore. And Ashley? She didn't stick around. The second the judge ordered Dominic to pay that money, she vanished. I heard she tried to snag a doctor, but that didn't work out. Karma has a way of finding people like her. I'm dating again, but it's different this time. I'm not hiding who I am. I wear my name like armor. If a man wants to be with me, he has to be strong enough to stand beside me, not in front of me. I learned a valuable lesson that day in court. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes silence is just loading the gun. They mocked the ex-wife, they laughed at the plain girl, and they dug their own graves while they were doing it. So, to anyone out there who feels invisible, who feels like people are walking all over them, let them underestimate you. Let them think they've won. Because the lower they think you are, the higher they have to look when you finally stand up. Dominic taught me that trust is fragile. But he also taught me that I am unbreakable. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments. Would you have told him about the money earlier? Or would you have done exactly what I did? I read every comment. Thanks for watching, and remember, be careful who you mock. You never know who they really are. See you in the next video.